Well, thanks everyone for being here. We are excited to connect with everyone about high quality assessments, the tools that you need for distance or traditional learning. Whatever life looks like in the fall, we want you to be prepared. So to start off, we thought we'd kick off with some introductions. My name is Julia Sweeney. I work with the EdSite team. I'm our Director of Sales, and I support teams across the US and around the world using our Assessments for Learning platform. I'm also joined by my colleague, Brian, from the EdSite team, who will be in the chat answering any questions that come up during the session, either to flag for us to talk about at the end or answer right there with the typing. We're also lucky to be joined by the Centerpoint team, and I'm going to kick it over to Jenna to introduce them.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Jenna Cohen, and I am a District Relationship Manager here at Centerpoint Education Solutions. We are thrilled to be on the call today and to be talking with you all. I am joined by a couple of colleagues of mine, Allison Maudlin, who is our Director of Marketing, and then my West Coast counterpart, Amber Burks-Cole. So welcome, guys, and thank you all for joining us today.
Perfect. So one of the reasons we really wanted to bring Jenna and the whole Centerpoint team in to talk with us about assessments for the fall and for even beyond the fall is because we know that teams need consistency and they need continuity, regardless of what the teaching and learning environment is going to look like. So we want you to leave here today with content understanding and technology understanding of how we can support teachers to make sure that that happens. So I'm going to first turn this over to Jenna to just dive into standards and how we make sure that the content is what we need.
Great, thank you so much, Julia. So we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. As we saw on the previous slide, standards are the map to our success. As all educators, we know that standards drive our thoughts, our dreams, our hopes for our kids. And given the current situation we're in now with COVID-19, I think that we can all anticipate that next year it may look a little different for us. It may not, but it probably will. So as educators, we have the daunting task ahead of us of planning for the unplannable. And you know what? We're going to do it because that is what we do. So thinking about the goal that Julia shared with us, we thought that we should start off with the standards in mind, thinking about what tools we have to really dig in deep to what the standards are. So up on my screen, on your screen, you see that we have something that we refer to as progression maps. And progression maps show us the difference in standards for students from one grade prior to one grade forward. So the specific map that's on our screen is for third grade. So that's why you see second grade to the left and fourth grade to the right. And let's take a look at the third grade standard, the first one, RL 3.1. So the language of the third grade standard says, ask and answer questions to demonstrate understanding of a text referring explicitly to the text as the basis for the answers. So let's think about that for just a minute. This standard is standard 1, no matter what grade, we say standard 1. So when I'm in third grade, I want to think about my little second grade friends, and there might have been some learning loss over the summer. There might still be some gaps. There might be some standards that aren't fully mastered. How, as a third grade teacher, am I able to determine that? Well, one answer is really high quality, great resources and assessments on the EdSite platform. But another way is, as I'm looking at what my expectations should be, I could look at the second grade standard for that same RL standard 1 and see what the text says. So in second grade, the standard reads, ask and answer questions as who, what, where, when, why, and how to demonstrate understanding of key details in the text. So again, let's pause, think about that for a second. The big differences in this text on the progressions map are the language that we have highlighted or colored in red. So again, that's the words as, who, what, where, when, why, and how, and key details. So as you can see, that's pretty different from the same standard from second grade to third grade. So in second grade, we're asking really specific questions for the students to respond to. And the goal is for them to ask and answer questions. That stays the same. But when we get to third grade, we're really just referring explicitly to a text as the basis for the answers. So as long as they can encompass one or some of those key details or the questions that we explicitly referred to in second grade, then they're going to be on track of demonstrating the understanding in third grade. So that is a pretty easy gap for us to think around consider filling that gap. Let's take a look at how this standard will then transition when you get to fourth grade. So as we think about that, I want to pause for a second. The reason why we want to look at a grade ahead is because sometimes, especially with our younger learners, we get super duper smarty pants and they show evidence of mastery well before the end of the school year. And as we all know, sometimes our smartest, most bright little friends are the friends that will act out and get bored and do all kinds of fun stuff in our classrooms. So as teachers, again, always planning for the unplannable, we have to think about what can we do to challenge them, but also get them ready for the next grade while still focusing on the work that we're doing. So in third grade, after my kiddo shows standard evidence of standard mastery, we want to look at that fourth grade same standard one. So typically this time of the year, a little sooner, I would want to take my third graders to work towards introducing them to the language of the standard to begin with. This year is not like most, so we didn't have that opportunity. But the language, as you can see, refer to the details and examples in a text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. Wow, this text is pretty different from when you go from third grade to fourth grade. So the red highlights, not only are we referring to details and examples, we're also drawing inferences from the text, which for many kids, drawing inferences is going to be a new skill by the time they're in fourth grade. So we really want them to pay attention to what ideas can you draw on your own as you're reading a text. So one way that teachers think about doing this is, and you can prepare your third graders, is as you get towards the end of the year, you're reading a couple of books in a text, whether it's independent reading or if you're doing a group read aloud, you can ask the kids to stop at a midway, quarterway, almost finish the book, and ask them what they predict, what inferences, what do you know from reading the text, and give specific details and examples. And they should be able to refer explicitly to the text from that third grade skill that they're mastering. So as you can see, you get a plethora of information just from looking at this progression map from, again, starting off with second grade, progressing to third grade and fourth grade. And the power also lies as a third grade teacher knowing what came before you, where students should be leaving off, and where students are heading. Next slide, please. Great. So now that I have modeled for you all how to do this on your own, I would love for everyone to take their eyes to standard 2. So this would be RL 2.2, RL 3.2, RL 4.2. It's just this row right below. And I'd like in the chat box for you just to take a couple of minutes and share for me what are the differences in similarities from second grade to third grade. So again, put yourself as a third grade teacher. Where are students showing the differences? What is the same as they are coming to you from second grade to third grade? What are the different gaps that you could expect, thinking about the different learning loss that may be occurring over the summer? And what are your expectations of where they should start with you in third grade? So I will wait to see some responses. Great, I'm seeing some come through. So some similarities are students recount stories, including fables and folktales from diverse cultures, and determine their central message, lesson, or moral. My students really need to be able to explain how they know the central message. Where in the text is their answer supported? That's great. Third includes myths and explaining how the message is conveyed through details. Wonderful. Differences through key details, text, myths are included in the third grade. Excellent. So now let's do the same activity, thinking about progressing from third grade to fourth grade. What are the similarities? What are the differences? What do you need to think about when preparing your kids towards the end of the year to start to enter that fourth grade standard? And again, we're going to focus on the RL 2.2, 3.2, and 4.2. So for this activity, 3.2 and 4.2. And I'll give you just a moment to do that. Yep, I see. Students like the shift to fourth grade pushes students to also start to summarize a text, much more synthesizing and putting in their own words. That's right. So we're going to push those students thinking. We're going to make them turn and work those brain muscles to, again, not just parroting what they hear and see in the text and what they're reading, but what are your own ideas? Very good. So fourth grade jumps to identifying a theme versus just recounting a story. Yes, and this is quite a skill for kids to pick up. And it's important as a classroom teacher, understanding those differences so that you can give the scaffolds to support your kids and to keep that same rigor of the standard, but get there as time allows. Yep, it's a big shift. It's adding drama and poems and summarizing the text. So again, that synthesizing of here I am just referring to explicit details in the text to these are my own words and this is how I am recalling the information in the text. Very good. So this is just one example, an activity that you can go through using these maps. It is also very helpful when analyzing assessment data and understanding where your kids' misconceptions are and where the other areas that you should provide extra support. So moving on to the next slide. As I mentioned, progression maps not only help us understand the language of the standards, but they help us set the expectations in the classroom. We imagine many of our third graders next year might not have mastered the full rigor of the standard. Using these maps can help us pinpoint where the student needs to be brought up to while also focusing on grade level work. Again, one thing that we always emphasize at Centerpoint is that we think that it's very important to always expose students to grade level work. Even if you have to provide scaffolding, meaning a word bank or meaning sentence strips or something else to help a student's learning, keeping it at that grade level is going to ensure that they get that exposure. So as a thank you for your guys' time today, we're going to provide these ELA maps to you. We have them for K to 11, so you'll be able to see the differences starting at grade K all the way up to, I'm sorry, we have them up to 12th grade. I'm so used to K to 11 for assessments. So from K to 12, you'll be able to see the progression that students are expected to go to through the ELA standards. We also offer at Centerpoint some professional learning where we can help your district customize how to use these maps. But again, as another resource of a high quality tool to support our mission at Centerpoint, we want to ensure that we can provide these to you to be able to make some decisions around student skills, abilities, and next steps with these maps. Next slide, please. So in the vein of thinking about high quality tools and data that's needed to make instructional decisions, we know that high quality tools alone, it's not enough to support districts, schools, teachers, and coaches. We offer a variety of professional learning plans coupled with high quality tools to help support educators across the country. Now that we've taken a closer look at the standards and progressions, we're faced with the question of, if a student is struggling with a specific standard, then what can we do as educators to help address the gap? So next slide. When you purchase the Centerpoint assessments in the EdSite platform, you are given a teacher's guide. And in this teacher's guide, there is a list of tools and resources that help teachers plan using the data. So on the screen now, here's an example of the kindergarten if-then chart. The if-then chart is a resource that may be used as a teacher considers instructional next steps after receiving data around students not showing evidence of student mastery. The chart lists the standards that have been the areas of focus within the performance task, offering suggestions for the engaging students who need more support. So thinking about your assessment, let's say that RLK 1, 2, and 3 were the standards that appeared on your assessment map. Your student is showing that they did not have complete evidence in mastering standard K.2. So students have difficulty retelling a familiar story, including key details. On the right-hand side, that is the then. So then you should use props and puppets to retell familiar stories. Practice with students created language to experience stories. Encourage retelling after listening to text. Provide opportunities to listen and retell at a listening center. So as you can see that you have a list of standards and then different instructional strategies, ideas that if a student doesn't master a certain standard, here are the ways that you can mitigate to ensure mastery in the future. So are there any questions so far about some of these high quality tools that are provided with the EdSite Centerpoint assessment? I see one here from Cynthia. Are these resources included with the free package, or are they only available for EdSite schools? So the Centerpoint assessments are offered on the EdSite platform as a licensing option. So there is a fee to use the Centerpoint assessments. As far as, I'll pass it over to Julia or Brian to talk about the platform cost.
Yeah, so I think the cost of the assessments, there is a cost, and that is part of the EdSite Schools platform. But I think in terms of the maps, when we were looking at, let's say, this slide, I think you were saying, Jenna, that those are available, right?
Yes, we're going to share these maps, and sorry for not being more clear, but we'll share these maps as a thank you over to all of the participants of today's call. Now, if you wanted to learn about the different professional learning that we typically offer alongside of these maps, we are more than happy to have a conversation around what needs to be done to customize that learning for your team. But that's something that we are offering to you for free today as a thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I think those are really cool. Yes. But yeah, the actual content itself, that is a cost item, and that's something that your team can get in touch with us to learn about the cost of EdSite Schools and the cost of these specific assessment packages. But I'm really excited that everyone who signed up for this gets that progression map to look at.
Yes, absolutely. And we are very pleased for the opportunity to be able to share it. So it doesn't look like there are any other questions around some of the content we just presented on. I am going to pass it over to Julia now that we've talked about some mitigation of what to do if a student doesn't understand a standard, and have you take it from here.
Yeah, well, I think it's a perfect segue into, well, I need to know how my students are doing on those standards. So now that I've invested all of this time to understand, okay, we're struggling with 3.1, what are some of the foundational skills that they were covering in 2.1? But I need to first know how we're doing on 3.1, especially if my students are completely new to me in the fall. So you want to make sure you have a solid understanding of where students are in their mastery in order to be able to leverage these tools and these strategies. So we want to make sure that you start with accurate reports, because, you know, when you have good data, then your instructional decisions will be more impactful. So we want to make sure you've got those accurate reports to guide your instruction. We want to make sure that you've got those quality assessments and the reliable technology to get there. So let's talk about the accurate reports though. So with EdSite and EdSite schools specifically, all of the data is real time. So I know as students are working and as soon as they submit, I know how they did on that assessment. I know how they did by standard. I know which items they've selected, maybe where those misconceptions are. And having that information immediately available to me really empowers me to put this structure into practice. So let's say that I want to look at data by standard. So we were talking about 3.1. These are some quick screenshots of looking at RI 3.8. So you could use that exact same exercise using those standard maps to look at 2.8 and 4.8 to then decide, okay, for my students that are in this below basic section of that skill, I know that I need to do something. And what's nice with EdSite schools is that I can actually click to see, well, which 2 students in my second period class are in that proficiency level? Which 2 students do I need to go back and review that summarizing skill? So when I click on that 50%, those 2 students, I can actually see the 2 students in that group where I can create a group to either send additional practice or progress monitor. So the idea being that I can look at that data and I can do something about it. If I see I've got 2 students that are advanced on this skill, I don't want them to have to sit through remediation with second grade and first grade materials if they're ready to be pushed with some 4th grade rigor. So being able to look at the data and then respond in the ways that Jenna was explaining really makes the assessment process that much more powerful. So this would be an example of a report looking at standards performance across an assessment. But what if I want to do some misconception analysis? Another assessment report that's really helpful for really driving that instructional response and understanding where misconceptions are is the item analysis report. So with EdSite schools, I'm able to click to see not just, you know, how many students and what percentage of students select each answer choice, but again, I can see which students and I can create that group. Because if I know that answer choice A was showing that they were doing an exact repeat of what the text said, but I wanted them to pick C, which was a more summarized version of what the text, of what the story message was, then I might be able to say, okay, everyone who selected A, I know I need to work on this second grade skill in order to address the learning gap. So being able to know that I need to work with Boris and Caleb, create that group, send them extra practice, and on our next assessment, filter the report to just the students in this group to see did my intervention help? Did our practice with RI 3.2 help close that gap? So these two reports in particular can be used really well with the standard progression maps and these if-then charts to make sure that I'm not just assessing students, but I am responding to my students' needs. So
as Julie is saying, these reports really allow you to use data to make instructional informed decisions around what the students know, what they need to know, and then to allow you to look forward in your curriculum of what's coming next.
Absolutely. Well, and so then it's like, okay, I know that I can use these reports and I can use these instructional tools to like address gaps, to drive student growth. But at the end of the day, I have to have high quality assessments in order for any of these measurements to be truly meaningful. And so let's talk a bit about quality assessments. And that's, you know, this is one of the reasons why we are so excited to have Centerpoint joining us, because they are experts in designing high quality assessments and training teams on how to design high quality assessments. So Jenna, I'll pass it back over to you to talk again about the actual assessments themselves and how you guys do it.
Absolutely. So at Centerpoint, we're a nonprofit organization, and as I failed to mention at the start of this call, we're based in DC, but we do have colleagues all across the United States. And so many of my team members come from the esteemed PARC Consortium, meaning that the look and feel of our assessments are going to be that summative environment. And when you can have the guesswork taken out of the assessments, we use evidence-centered design to design all of our assessments. You'll have a turnkey product that's ready to go. It's aligned to the standards, your state standards to be specific. Additionally, you're going to have the rigor that is appropriate at the grade level that you are teaching. And most importantly, you're going to have that DOK balance, meaning that you're going to have levels 1, 2, 3, and 4 all throughout your assessment to ensure that you're not just asking the lowest level or the highest level question to get a full range of that data, to really hone in on what Julia's been talking about around using data to make instructional decisions, to really know what your kids know, what they still need to know, where reteaching might need to occur, where you can go fast and where you go slow. Next slide. So here's a sample of one of our items in the EdSite database. This is a third grade item where students are expected to read the passage on the left and then respond to a two-part item on the right. So you can see that it is on grade level. It addresses multiple standards within one question, and it requires the student to refer explicitly to the text in order to get their answers. Next slide. So this item is a really cool technology enhanced item that is on the EdSite platform. And this highlights an 8th grade math item aligned to the illustrative mathematics curriculum. So as you can see on the screen, that the student is actually required to plot the points based on the data that you see in the item above. So this way, as the math teacher, you can really take a look conceptually to see what the student knows and where they need some more practice. After they do the graphing item, there's a part B that then requires the students to use a drop down to be able to respond to the question using the different words. I believe it's linear, nonlinear, to show what the correlation of the data is or is not. So again, the technology included in the assessments is not just because it looks really cool and it gives our students something to play around with, but we're engaging students in the content to really dig into that deep rigor of what they know, what they still need to know. So as a teacher, once we have that data, we can make really smart data informed decisions.
Well, and one of the, I mean, it's always been a challenge with the shift from paper to online. is this tension of not reducing the content to just multiple choice, not reducing our skills or oversimplifying our checks for understanding to fit limited technology capabilities, but to make sure that we're actually assessing students in the way that truly measures the skill. So instead of having students select from pictures of, a chart, I'm actually having students plot points. And so what's really exciting for me is just that with Centerpoint's expertise in item design and making sure that these items are written in that highly credible way, and then EdSite's expertise in question type capability to make sure that we don't have to make any tough choices to limit the true measurement of the skill, you're going to get a truly aligned assessment. And I will just say, these are two examples in these sample items. This would be one of our, if you're in like Arkansas or Massachusetts or New Jersey, this would be a state test viewer that looks and feels like your state test. And, the next slide, this would be a look and feel that looks more like California, Ohio, Arizona, Washington. So we at EdSite are also able to make sure that your online question types mirror the look and feel of state assessments. So even while you are assessing for the purpose of driving student growth and driving your instructional choices, you just happen to be completely aligning to the end of your state test. So when that test comes, kids are showing their content knowledge, not their ability to navigate an interface.
That's right. And it's really important when students are taking any assessment that you're really focusing on how well the students are showing their progress of the mastery of the standards versus how well they can take an assessment. As educators, we care less about if they can take an assessment well or not, and more so if they can demonstrate mastery of the standards. Thank you, Julia.
Absolutely. Well, and I think this segues really well into just now we're talking about technology. And so we're talking about technology that aligns to the skills that we are measuring, but we're also talking about the technology needed to, as Jen has been saying, plan for the unplannable. So, I need to be ready that I might have some students at home, some students in front of me. I might have students in front of me one day and at home the next day. And so making sure that I can continue to use assessments and drive my response as an educator, regardless of whether it's a traditional learning environment, that blended learning, or totally distance. And so we were going to wrap up this discussion by talking specifically about the technology tools that can support the spectrum of plans being discussed for next school year. So we're going to highlight some of the platform features of EdSite schools, specifically because, Centerpoint's content is available for teams that are using that premium EdSite schools version. And so while we've talked about those great maps at the beginning that Centerpoint makes available for free, and we know that EdSite has capabilities available to all teachers for free, we really want to talk about this robust solution. If I'm looking for something for my grade level, my school, my district, we want to talk about some of these premium platform features. So when thinking about using these assessments in the fall, there's a lot of features on EdSite schools and EdSite that are going to support you from traditional blended, distance, all of the learning environments. So from randomizing the question order to setting access windows, there's a lot that you can do. For today's discussion, we're going to focus on 3 specifically that most align with the way you would likely use these Centerpoint assessments. to make sure you understand where student mastery is, again, so we can respond. So the first one we're going to talk about is the secure browser. So on EdSite schools, you are actually able to require a secure browser, a lockdown browser, a kiosk mode, whatever we call it. It is a system that does not let students open other tabs. So if I want to make sure that my students aren't opening tabs, aren't Googling the answers, aren't pulling up the calculator, this is a nice, more secure option, with the recognition that if students are testing at home, you might want to couple this with some additional settings to make sure that it truly is a secure environment and that it truly is your students that are taking the assessment. So, besides having a lockdown browser, we want to talk about this second feature of enabling real-time connect, because I could lock down the browser, but if I have my cell phone, I could, at home be doing everything on my phone instead of on the lockdown tab. And so a lot of teams have been asking for a video capability, a live video option while students are in a secure browser. And so part of the real-time connect is exactly that. So if I am looking to have a live connection with students, let's say that I'm giving a center point assessment and I want to proctor this assessment with half of my students at home and half of my students are in front of me. I can turn on the real-time connect and then click on that connection button to see all of my students. Oops, come back. I, as the teacher, can see all of my students. My students can only see me. So what I like about this feature is that if I'm using this for a secure proctoring setup, I am able to, actually monitor the room in a sense to make sure that students are truly the ones working on the assessment and that they're not using other devices and outside help. If I then use EdSite to respond to data, let's say I learn from these center point assessments that I need to give some remediation, this is also a great tool just to be able to provide direct guidance to students. And it may also be a case where I need to redirect a student. So I can call one student specifically. It's going to pause and mute me for everybody else. And I could have a discussion with Rocky about taking his time on this assessment. And we've only been working on this for 2 minutes. You cannot possibly have answered 40 questions. So, being able to have direct dialogue with students while an assessment is happening is something that can be really helpful to bridge that distance gap. So the real-time connect, I'm really focusing here on that summative assessment setup where it's more about securely proctoring, but you can definitely see some of the ways that this could easily also be used for more formative uses where you are doing more intervention and guidance for students. But the real-time connect with the lockdown browser allows you to proctor secure assessments. Now, the last setting that we're going to talk about specifically for these summative center point style assessments is a time limit. Now, if let's say I have some students in the classroom and we are going to work on this assessment from 10 o'clock until 10:45, I want to make sure that even students at home are also getting the same amount of time to complete the assessment. So being able to set a time limit to say, you know what, students, everyone has an hour and 30 minutes. And once they get started, after that hour and 30 minutes, the assessment will automatically submit. So being able to have those time controls can be really, really important. This is also a good time just to point out that you can set student accommodations to follow students to all of their assessments. So let's say I'm using math and ELA assessments from Centerpoint. I don't have to turn on text to speech and extended time on each of those assessments for all of my groups of students that need certain accommodations. I can actually just set at the student level that Jenna needs to have extended time. She needs unlimited time on all of her assessments. And, you know, Brian, we're going to turn on text to speech on all of his assessments. And so I take that pressure off of my teachers of having to set up all of the necessary and really important accommodations. And I also make sure we are implementing those with fidelity. So just a kind of a side note, when we're talking about time limits, that you are able to, with EdSite schools, set those at the school or district level to make sure that kids are set up for success no matter what assessment they're taking or where they are doing their learning. So those really are, you know, our main points here. I'm actually going to go back to, let's go back here. Whoops, where'd it go? Oh, there we go. We got there. So, you know, just thinking about these reports, the high quality assessments, and then the reliable technology. Within these 3 points, I think that if you have Centerpoint content and you have EdSite schools technology, you're going to have your bases covered to make sure you're ready to support kids in a powerful way, in a way that's going to drive growth really intentionally. So I guess at this point, we can turn it over to questions. Jenna, is there anything that you want to add in there?
Yeah, Julie, I think that you hit it right on the head, that, you know, when having meaningful conversations about student data and what to do next, or now what, carrying the robust reports from the EdSite platform to using the high quality pre-made turnkey forms from Centerpoint really sets an environment of success up for teachers and educators to be able to help propel kids to the next level.
Yeah, and I saw some questions in there just about, you know, oh, is this content part of EdSite schools? So this Centerpoint package is a line item that can be purchased with an EdSite schools account. So if you would like to purchase assessments for specific grade levels or specific campuses, that is an option. Or you can purchase it for the entire district. I know, Jenna, can you speak to, you guys cover K through 11?
That's right. So we offer K to 11 in both math and ELA. Thank you, Julia, but this is a softball. We cover K to 11 through ELA and mathematics, and then we also have some specialty assessments. We have interim assessments aligned to the EL education curriculum in grades K to 8, keeping in mind that in grades 6 through 8, it's aligned to that brand new EL education curriculum that's being released this year that many districts are moving over to. And then for mathematics, we have the IM, the illustrative mathematic aligned interims in grades 6 through 8, and then high school is coming out this year. So we are excited to talk to folks about that, happy to answer any content questions. And then anybody focusing on K2 early learning, we have some really innovative assessments set up there to ensure that even our earliest learners can participate in assessments from a distance or in person or with some guided help. And the other thing, wait, there's more. We do offer diagnostic assessments as well that can really help you hone in on grade level skills and standards to determine, again, where there was learning loss from last year potentially, what standards students still need to practice on to master, and just collect more data to drive those instructional decisions.
And Jenna, would I be correct in saying you guys also just like do a whole lot more than that in terms of consultation and like
That's right.
People's needs?
Yes, wait, there's more. Yeah, so at Centerpoint, we focus on 3 primary buckets of work. The first being assessments, which we are gathered here today. The second being around professional learning, and then we also provide many districts across the country in curriculum and instruction support. So no matter what your needs are, as it comes in mind, let us know, and if we're not the right people, we can always help point you to the right resources. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit. Our mission is to provide high quality tools and resources to teachers to advance student outcomes. So any work we can do to help advance that mission, that's what we're all about.
Awesome. Great. Well, I know we'll hang around in the chat a little bit longer, but I'll switch over to this slide that if anyone has any questions about EdSite schools and learning more about the technology component and the platform, you can reach out to schools@edsite.com. And then Jenna, I'm guessing info@cpeducation.org, best one for you guys.
Yes, that's right. You'll be connected with either Amber or myself.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, well, I really enjoyed today's session. I feel like I learned a lot.
Indeed, me too.
Okay, perfect. Well, we'll be around here, and yeah, thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you for having us. It was a true pleasure. Have a great day, everyone.